individual contributors.
This is Newsline. I'm Michael Chagani. Tonight, Mr. Alan Leung, who is the leader of the Civic Party. He's also a barrister. And of course, you're also now the leader of the convener of the Pan Democrats. Before we start, I just want to remind viewers, next Sunday, a week today, the show will go out at 7 p.m. rather than 8 p.m. just for the 1 week next Sunday. So please bear that in mind. I just had to tell the viewers that.
Of course.
Because we're going to be preempted by soccer. So, all right. Now, Mr. Alan Leung, you've been here many times before. You're a barrister. Now, this time I invited you to come here, and thank you for coming.
My pleasure, as always.
Because I had said something about you that you had said that the rule of law doesn't mean total obedience to the rule of law, and you said you had not exactly said that, so I wanted you to clarify what you meant. Now, I recall you saying that, and the exact words were, the rule of law doesn't mean total obedience to the rule of law. Do you still stand by that?
Well, thank you for affording me this opportunity, Michael. I think I never said something along that line. You might have misheard me when you quoted me to have said total. What I have said is that there is much more to the rule of law than merely obedience of the law. Merely
What's the difference? There's much more than merely obeying it.
There is a world of difference, Michael. We have been practicing the rule of law and observing the spirit of the rule of law as an institution. We use our laws to protect individuals' rights and freedoms. We use our laws to keep under check and control the exercise of public powers. Now, these are very important facets of the rule of law as an institution. Take, for instance, we have our chief executive being reported to have received £4 million.
The 50 million Hong Kong dollars. Right?
Yeah, in the sale of his old company to Australian company. Now, and as you must have been aware, that there had been at least twice attempts on the part of the Pan Democrats to establish a select committee under the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance to look into it and to report on what exactly happened. The prima facie case has been very, very strong that such receipt of money is not proper, and it could be an offense under Section 9 of the Prevention of Bribery Ordinance. And also there is this possibility of double allegiance, right? Whether you are serving only the Central People's Government and Hong Kong SAR people, or you have another allegiance owed to the Australian company who paid you that money. Now, this is important because there has been a lot of grievances amongst Hong Kong people that such a strong prima facie case is not allowed to be looked into. This is an affront to the rule of law as an institution, because we are not able to look into this
But you know,
saga.
I'm not here to defend Siwa Leung, but there has also been another case made, and the people who bought it and the people who sold it said that it was a totally standard practice, because at the time he didn't even know that he was going to win. He was going to in fact lose. But you know, that's an issue I don't want to go into because I'm not totally familiar with it.
Yeah.
But you know, I want to go back to the rule of law. Now you say that he broke the rule of law, but you are also saying that at times, and Albert Ho has also said, you can disobey the rule of law for a higher principle. But you, as a barrister, do you agree with that?
Well, I
the
think
higher principle now being the fight for democracy.
No, I think what you must be referring to is the concept of civil disobedience.
Right.
Of course, we want our laws to be able to deliver justice and particularly equality and protecting the freedom of individuals. Now, when there are laws that could not deliver justice to the people, then of course the first thing you do is to try to change and amend those laws from within. So you would go to the Legislative Council, you would lobby the executive and see if they could see fit to introduce some amendments to the laws. Now, but if we are running against brick walls on all these fronts, and then like what Gandhi or for that purpose Aung San Suu Kyi may still be doing, is that you breach those laws. You, like Gandhi, who led the Indians to go to the sea to make salt. That's right. Just to evade paying salt tax to the British colonial masters. Now, this is a means to really bring the public's attention to the unjust laws.
Okay. Now, you say unjust laws, Mr. Leong. Last week, sitting in that chair, was Mr. Kamal Bukhari, Mr. Justice Kamal Bukhari, a non-permanent judge of the Court of Final Appeal. I'm sure you know him.
Of course.
I asked him the same question, and he said, and you just talked about unjust laws, and you brought out the case of Gandhi, and he said he could not see that there were any, he didn't even use the word unjust, he said oppressive laws in Hong Kong to justify civil disobedience. Now, Gandhi, nobody can argue that there were no oppressive laws in Gandhi's British-ruled India. There were, and so civil disobedience was justified. But Mr. Justice Bukhari said he didn't see that there are any oppressive laws in Hong Kong now that would justify civil disobedience. Would you agree with that?
Well, I always respect Mr. Justice Bukhari, but I don't know whether you have...
He's a very liberal judge, you know.
Of course. I don't know whether you asked him about electoral laws, whether the electoral laws that we have at the moment could be considered just and could afford to the young people...
You said there are no laws, electoral or otherwise, is that there are no oppressive laws in Hong Kong whatsoever. He was very clear on that.
But I can only agree to disagree. The electoral laws that we have at the moment cannot afford equal opportunity of participation to especially the young people, the next two generations of Hong Kong, the chance to participate in the way that they ought to have been able to participate in selecting our chief executive. And what results from that is that it is a very incestuous relationship between the vested interests in Hong Kong and the Central People's Government, the Chinese Communist Party, so that they could agree on who could run Hong Kong. Now, that is why when C.Y. Leung ran for chief executive, he portrayed himself as somebody who could be the savior for the grassroots. But of course, we all heard what he said recently.
You don't like this man, do you?
About 14K. Yes, I called him a moron.
I think that's because I wrote something about you using a wrong word.
And I learned from you, Michael, as always. And there's also a very recent case in point here when you talk about the rule of law. We have seen bailiffs going to the streets purportedly at the request of the plaintiffs in two different cases, civil cases before our courts, to help the plaintiffs to execute a civil injunction. Now, I have read Mr. Justice Au's judgment with great care, together with the Court of Appeal's judgment refusing leave to appeal. But in the Court of Appeal judgment, Mr. Justice Johnson Lam explained very clearly, and in fact I would say supplemented Mr. Justice Au's order. The order required that before you could arrest anybody, that arrestee must first have been explained the exact order.
But I saw the order being read over and over and over again on TV 3 or 4 times using loudhailers and posted and in newspapers.
All right, so
if you haven't read it, that means you didn't want to read it.
No, sorry. I of course understand that's what had fallen from the Secretary for Justice. Where you said, oh, it was...
No, I saw it. I saw it being read.
It was...
the lady was saying, now, do you understand in English and in Cantonese?
Well, you think alike with the Secretary for Justice. I saw the Secretary of Justice say, it has been broadcast all over.
No, I did see it. I saw it on TV.
You did see, but what had you seen? You only saw the bailiff being caught on camera announcing the...
But aren't you splitting hairs here, Mr. Leung? Because don't tell me that all of those people in Mong Kok did not know that there is a court injunction for them to leave.
Sorry.
You are splitting hairs.
Sorry. You may know, as 7 million Hong Kong people already knew, that there had been a court injunction.
Right.
But is that good enough? You see, a particular and specific arrestee...
It's good enough if it's civil disobedience and you said you were going to not object to any court order and you would obey the rule of law, and it's a peaceful obedience.
Excuse me, that is where you went wrong, Michael. Because if you are committing somebody for contempt of court, and if successful, this person can end up in jail. Now, you must make triply sure that he or she knows exactly how the operation of that injunction order in the context that he or she was finding himself or herself, and how he or she behaved would infringe that court order. Otherwise, you will not be observing the rule of law in terms that it must have objective certainty. When
well,
you
that's really deep. Let me interrupt just for a second because I've got to take a break and I'll let you explain that. And we'll see you soon.
Memories of the Century, Bruce Lee's 74th birthday.
There's nobody who's going to replace Bruce Lee.
He's like a rabbit.
He was just really different from everybody else.
Be water, my friend.
He brought cultures together.
And it was amazing how he connected so many people.
We just have to be thankful we had him for 32 years.
Must be a mistake.
I Am Bruce Lee, tonight at 10. All about sacred. For a woman, a mum, a wife.
It's fine, Chloe. I will be okay.
Having breast cancer could be desperate.
We need to get them all in the same room, sit them down and tell them together, which is what we did.
Staying positive and super nurses can help to get over the illness.
Reconstruction changes a lot of ladies' lives in a very positive way.
Super Nurses, Tuesday night at 10. Gourmet Checkpoint. 4 celebrities battling for the MasterChef crown. Taking challenge to make delicacies. That needs enthusiasm, but also techniques. Who can stay and who's going home? This competition, only talent can survive. Celebrity MasterChef, tomorrow night at 8:30.
不如落啲糖漿啦。
咪住，要唔要由我揀？
哦，好似收唔收商業電子信息咁，都係由你自己揀嘛。
冇錯，我哋可以透過拒收信息登記冊，拒收唔想要嘅商業電子信息。3個拒收信息登記冊已經全部推出，依家無論你想登記傳真號碼，抑或電話號碼，打1835000就得啦。 登記咗拒收功能喺第10個工作天就生效。想知多啲就上網或者攞本小冊子啦。
Soccer Fever, HKFA Senior Shield. Broadcast only on ATV Home. More fantastic games are available on Home. South China versus Buchun Rangers. Tonight, late night at 1:10. Eastern versus YFCMD. Tonight, late night at 3.
Thanks for staying with us. This is Michael Chagani, and this is Newsline, and I've got Mr. Alan Leung, the leader of the Civic Party, with me as my guest. Thank you again for being on the show. Now, I want sorry I had to take a break when you were in a very detailed explanation of the law. Now, what if I can summarize what you were saying in a nutshell was that the court injunction was not meticulously explained to the people in Mong Kok to the point where they understood what the injunction was. Because you're saying that if they had not understood the injunction and therefore they violated the injunction, they could then be hauled before the courts and be found guilty of violating without having understood the injunction. That was what you were saying, right?
Yes, because I was touching on an important facet of the rule of law as an institution, that there has to be objective certainty before you can commit somebody for contempt of court or for fouling legal provisions.
Then I asked you, there were thousands of people there. The court, the lawyer who got the injunctions read it out several times and said, do you understand it? It was posted, it was in newspapers. Everybody reported, the media all reported it. I don't know whether it's practical or possible to explain it to each and every one of the thousands who were in Mong Kok. But if you move away from that, Mr. Leung, the original intent of this was that you have a civil disobedience, peaceful one, and then you would be arrested if the police came. Now, so they were in Mong Kok in a disobedience protest. Some private companies went to the court, got an injunction, and the bailiffs came and the injunction was explained, and then the police came and cleared the barricades. But now you're saying that they should not have moved unless they were explained thoroughly and clearly what the injunction meant. But that departs from the original intent of what your disobedience protest was, which was you lie there and then they came and arrest you and you would not resist. But now you're arguing the finer points of whether the injunction was explained clearly.
No, it's not that I am arguing anything. In fact, you can look at Mr. Justice Au's order and the Court of Appeals orders. This is the requirement of the courts, that you are executing a civil injunction. And in the civil context, you really have to make sure that the people affected by the order knows exactly what the order is about and how the order affects him or her.
So the persons who said they didn't know exactly were arrested, they can then just go to court and say, I wasn't told about the injunction.
Oh yes, then the judge will have to decide.
All right.
Right?
So we will just have to see what happens there. I just want to move away because I don't have that much time left. Now this Occupy movement is continuing. By the way, Mr. Bukhari, Justice Bukhari also said that there is no reason how you could not obey injunctions, and he could not see how the rule of law was not hurt if court orders were disobeyed. Do you also agree to disagree with that?
No, I agree with that entirely. In fact, I have never, ever advised people who may be affected by the injunction not to obey them. Because as part of the rule of law, obeying court order is a must, no matter how much you dislike a court order.
But you're saying that it should have been explained more clearly.
Oh, it should have been explained. And also, I particularly loathe the idea of the executive I don't have evidence to say that they actually collaborate with these taxi unions or public light bus association. But at the very least, it was because of the inaction on the part of the C.Y. Leung administration not to enforce the criminal law themselves.
But do you want the police then to use the public order ordinance and clear them away?
Well, if...
Because they did, you would protest.
Well, if the government, if C.Y. Leung is really good for the job and worth his salt, this is what you would expect a responsible government to do. Instead of hiding behind a civil case.
But you're saying then they should use the public order ordinance and clear, like they're doing in Missouri and so on.
Well, whatever law that could be in the executive's armory to restore order to Hong Kong, if you think...
You don't mind that happening, Mr. Leung?
Well, it's not a matter of whether I mind or not, Michael.
That's how it should be done, is what you're saying.
Well, yes. This is a political issue, and you have to solve it politically by whatever means. Well, of course, I would advise C.Y. Leung and the Central People's Government to use dialogue to negotiate with our
that's what
future generations.
That's what I want to come to now. Yeah. We'll leave aside the law and order issue. It's difficult to discuss it with the barrister. I mean, obviously you
have been doing it very well.
Yeah. Now, talk about C.Y. Leung. Two things caught my eye in the past few days. University polls, Chinese U and Hong Kong U, showed that his popularity has actually risen. It still fell below the passing mark of 50. Yes. But it's jumped by 4 points or so in both polls. And other polls have shown that over 70% of the people now want this Occupy protest to end. Well over 50% now disagree with the Occupy movement. Are you losing the moral argument here, Mr. Leung?
I think these polls show and bear witness to the fact that the government's tactics or strategy may be producing result. The strategy that I just referred to is a strategy that they would use people against people and hope that the umbrella movement will be killed by public indignation as a result of all the nuisance created.
But surely the public are smart enough to make up their own minds, and they won't fall into any strategy or tactics used by C.Y. Leung.
No, you really cannot expect that much from the general public, who would have
why not? They're a pretty smart public. They're politically savvy.
They are, of course, very smart.
You're not saying they're stupid, right?
They are, of course, smarter than I am. But the thing is, as a parent, they may have to see to an alternative means of taking children to school. You may have to spend an hour more than usual to go to work.
But those are genuine grievances.
Yes. That's why the students have repeatedly apologized for having caused such nuisance. But you see, this is a most irresponsible way of C.Y. Leung and his administration to deal with this political issue. You really have to start the dialogue with the people in whatever form to really rally support for an electoral model that could end Hong Kong up in a win-win-win situation. But he's doing nothing except sitting there waiting to see, as an onlooker, people fighting people.
Well, he's doing nothing, but the students are saying they will now think of escalating their action, perhaps surrounding the central government offices, other government buildings. As an elected legislative councillor and the convener of the Pan Democrats now, and the leader of the Civic Party, do you think action should be escalated?
Well, this is not a time that you should consider escalating the action.
You disagree with the students on that?
Well, insofar as such escalation means you are going away and turning your back on peaceful demonstration.
Well, I think one of the newspapers, I think it was Apple Daily, actually said in an editorial that Gandhi's peaceful doesn't work, and we should follow Taiwan's model of street confrontations. Do you agree with that?
No, I think Hong Kong is not prepared for confrontational way of dealing with this political issue. I think well, at least the great majority of Hong Kong people would still want very rational way of getting what we want.
Okay, I've got 1 minute left. Sorry, I have to interrupt you there. Now, you say let's talk. I think everybody agrees with that, Mr. Leung. Now, but we do know that the central government is not going to move away from its political reform framework. There will not be public nomination. Siwa Leung's not going to go. So those things, I think, are pretty clear. Is there a way for the Democrats, for the students, and for everybody to find dialogue given those positions of the central government? Is there still a way?
Well, there is a will. If there's a will, there's a way. I really think that the Central People's Government and Siwa Leung administration ought to be more receptive to public opinion, and you can't really be sending the idea to us that you are not going to move an iota. Now, how could that end the umbrella movement? If you do it that way, you will lose the next two generations.
Do you think that then is your position, Mr. Leung, and the umbrella movement's position that the central government must change its political framework? Is that the position?
Well, it must move it a little bit.
Okay.
At least.
How? In what way?
Well, I think President Xi Jinping will be a much, much wiser man than I am. And he who has all the powers in his hands.
So move it a little bit. Maybe both sides need to compromise a little bit on this, right?
Well, I'm open to any dialogue.
Well, that's good to hear. And we hope that everybody can compromise on this and find a solution, right? And just a quick reminder again, next week I'll see you at 7 p.m. And thank you, Mr. Leung.
My pleasure.
Coming up, Travel Checkpoint, a window on. Memories of the century, Bruce Lee's 74th birthday.
There's nobody who's going to replace Bruce Lee.
He's like a rabbit.
He was just really different from everybody else.
Be water, my friend. He brought cultures together.
And it was amazing how he connected so many people.
We just have to be thankful we had him for 32 years.
Must be a mistake. I Am Bruce Lee, tonight at 10. All about sacred. For a woman, a mum, a wife.
It's fine, Chloe, I will be okay.
Having breast cancer could be desperate.
We need to get them all in the same room, sit them down and tell them together, which is what we did.
Staying positive and super nurses can help to get over the illness.
Reconstruction changes a lot of ladies' lives in a very positive way.
Super Nurses, Tuesday night at 10. All about Asia. With geographical advantages, Wuhan aspires to be the industrial and urban center of China. Brimming with potential for tourism growth, Da Nang of Vietnam is on the way to a remarkable success.
We have to create or differentiate our tourism product, improve what we have now.
Boomtown Asia, Thursday night at 10:05.
有一日，阿爸買咗好多把搓耳扇翻嚟啊！哇！
以後你哋唔使派二手煙啦。預備。幾勁！
老公幾勁都冇用啦，殘留喺衫褲同埋家姐嘅三手煙抽唔到㗎。無論喺邊度食煙，啲有毒同埋致癌物質都會黐住你全身，損害我哋健康。
為咗屋企人，為咗自己，我戒。
All about science. The brilliant beaked whales make a world of sounds. Scientists find the communication secret of the biggest mammal on Earth.
It's the equivalent of trying to listen to somebody shouting in the bottom of a well or a pit.
How can ship construction contribute to better safety?
Nowadays you can get dry fooded from the ship to the life raft.
Scientists figure out ways for surviving an emergency. Science on the Seven Seas. Tomorrow night at 10.